Hey everyone, this is Jack Mangan of Support Life in Music, back with another Slam Summit. We're going to have to start numbering these. Our guest this week is Heidi Robinson-Fitzgerald of HERFitz PR. She's a legendary, greatest of all time level publicist who started with Warner Brothers and has spent the following decades working with the biggest music stars in the world. In this episode, she talks about her career working with Slayer, Barry Manilow, the Sex Pistols, Alice Cooper, Jane's Addiction, Jethro Tull, Anthrax, Ghost, Dirty Honey, Carla Harvey, America, the Doobie Brothers, the first Lollapalooza shows, and more. Some quotes. I remember thinking about Michael Jackson at the time, who was, not getting a lot of good publicity, and it was really beginning to hurt him. And that's what really made me concerned about Perry. When I first met them, I went on the bus just to say hello and introduce myself, and I was grabbed. And she tells a Spinal Tap-esque story about a potentially dangerous mishap, dropping confetti on a crowd. Keep listening to hear the stories and the context. Hey everyone, this is Jack Mangan of Support Life in Music. You also know me, I did the Am I Evil graphic novel. I'm also part of the Metal Hall of Fame, and I've been writing for years with Rich Catino for metalasylum.net. So if you listen to Fools, the Mob Rules, I am just in complete awe of my guest today. To talk to us here on this Slam panel, the Slam Summit panel, is someone who's just had the most incredible career and has really, literally changed the world for the better through the music that she has touched and influenced. This person, to me, is quite a rock star. I mean, I can't do her justice by naming just a couple of people she's worked with, over her career with HERFitz PR and Deaf American. We got Anthrax, Slayer, Kerry King, Rick Rubin, Jane's Addiction, Rod Stewart, Sir Mix-a-Lot, Barry Manilow, Black Sabbath, Muse, Jesus and Mary Chain. I mean, that's just the tip of the iceberg. So Heidi Robinson-Fitzgerald, thank you so much for taking some time to talk to us today.
It's my pleasure, and my goodness, your check is in the mail.
Well, I make the joke often, but yeah, that's it for the compliments. No more compliments.
Okay, good.
So again, that is truly the tip of the iceberg with the amazing people you've worked with over the years. But and actually, so I talked recently on a recent episode with another person I hold in high esteem in your world, is Amy Sharetto, and there's a lot of great people in that world. And one of the things actually this applies to Amy, and I think it absolutely applies to you as well, is it can be a tough business, and there's a lot of bad reputations about people being mean and vicious and predatory, but that's never been my you and I have had many emails over the years, and we've worked on some things together. That's never been the case with you. Like the exact opposite. You've always been super professional and kind and honest. I mean, but straightforward with me. So I mean, that's kind of, it's not, I guess there's a question. The question in there is like, how has it been your approach, and has that been your dealings with artists and press and the people around you in this world?
Well, your words are very, very kind. I have to thank you for that. I'm not really quite sure how to answer that, other than to say, I don't. I think that I deal with people, and I talk with people, and I pitch people, I communicate with people just the way I do, just talking to people. I've never really tried to kind of get down and dirty and come up with mysterious and fabulous ways of trying to get through to somebody. It's really just all communication. Communication is, I think, the single most important thing in life. And as a publicist, it surely is. I think, one of the things that I've always tried to do is not take on a client unless I'm really, really excited about the client, and I feel that he or she or they have a great story to tell. Because publicity is just really all about telling a story, just like being a songwriter. It's all about telling a story. And if I take on clients where I feel that they've got a great story, backstory, because then I think that that's something that I think that there's probably an overabundance of people who just say, "Hey, I'm just started working with Bloody Blah, and they've got a new record coming out, and they're going to tour, and how about let's get you together, and we'll do a story on them." Okay, well, that's fine, but every rock and roller goes on tour, and everyone has a new record coming out, and everyone, you gotta have a story um, that is going to be unique. Um, it, and then I think that that's when you're able to win somebody over. Um, it just can't be just because somebody has a record coming out. It's just
Mhm.
that's not big news. Every artist has a record coming out, so
Yeah, no, that's really well put. Yeah, and it's got to be part of the narrative. And I guess sure, some artists are big enough. I'm just agreeing with you. I think some artists are big enough that yeah, a new album is part of the story. It's part of the big narrative. But yeah, when you're kind of scrabbling for attention and scrapping for that place at the table, yeah, you've got to have something. And I guess now, how does that um, tie into what you do? Do you sometimes have to scramble to help make that story happen for someone?
well, to me, it isn't so much that it's to me it's not enough to pitch a writer on doing a story on a client of mine because that client has a record coming out. That is not selling a story. That's not a story. I mean, what's the guy going to end up writing that's going to go online or in print? Blah de blah has a new record coming out. And on other news, I mean, there's a
Mm.
story. What's the record about? What influenced it? Who wrote it? What are the stories? Every single solitary song tells a story. And I think that a publicist needs to get down deep and find out what the story is, what's being communicated, not just a song, but um, I've got a one client. Hold on just one second, because I want to do this right. I have uh, here. I have a client who has a very dense background in being involved in funerals, in embalming bodies that have passed, and in dealing with the family that has lost that person. Um, and she's a wild rock and roller, but she's got that kind of a background. And there are many times when I'll email or call her and say, I got an idea for a press release and I want to talk to you about it. When do you have some time? Well, I've got a funeral that I'm dealing with on the East Coast in a few days. So I got to first do that, and then I'll come back and then we'll do this. I think that's fascinating. They're just really, she has a great backstory. And the fact that um, that backstory and what else she does in life and the way she interacts with people because of the jobs that she has is fascinating. And I think that the most important thing when you want to set up an interview with a writer is have a story that hasn't been told, you know, to
Mhm.
because then the writer gets excited about it. And that's going to make the story that much better. So everybody has a story, you just have to find it.
Man, I love it. I love that perspective, and I love that. And I'll just say quickly, this isn't really on point, but I'll say as a journalist, that goes both ways. Because as a journalist, I've done the interviews where the artist is kind of like, yes, I'll answer that same question I've answered 1,000 times before. But I love it that moment as a journalist interviewing an artist where you kind of get them and they go, oh, like you can kind of hear them or see them kind of like snap out of it and go like, oh, that's a new question. I'm excited to get into this and tell a story. So I hear that kind of coming from both sides. That you've got to have the good story to tell and the human side of it. Again, you're talking about the person who's their day job is something that deals with a lot of gravity and seriousness and sympathy, and that's really human. That humanizes that artist a whole lot more and does make them a lot more interesting than just they're 13 on the pop chart.
Exactly, exactly. And I think with Carla, I'm so lucky with it because frankly, in all the years I've been doing this, she is the only client I've ever worked with who's also a grief coach. You know? So
Yeah.
yeah, it's all about the story. The
Yeah.
publicity, journalism, it's all about the story.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And well, and so I'll kind of tilt the narrative a little bit. So one of the stories that Support Life in Music focuses on is helping people to kind of get through the bad chapters of the story, the hard chapters of the story. So now as a PR, I know you've been around it and seen it and been subjected to it. So, what is your strategy kind of for protecting, not only protecting yourself, but, from the artists and fans and crew and everyone around you from their own demons and the human demons, the human predators around them? What's your strategy for keeping people safe in those situations?
Yeah, and when you say keeping people safe, you're talking about a client, right?
Well, yes, but yeah, I mean, and yourself. I mean, how do you keep yourself and your clients from the pitfalls that are so prevalent in the music world, and some of the things we've seen that have claimed some of our brothers and sisters in this world.
Well, again, I think that it comes back to honesty, to having done your homework, to know what you're talking about, to know what needs to be delivered, and then how to deliver it. But I will make another comment about this based on a couple of words that you did say, because I think it's important. Um, uh, I did publicity for many years with Jane's Addiction, and 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 I remember that after things kind of started, when things were really starting to blow up with Jane's Addiction, this is a number of years ago. I I was obviously pitching stories primarily for Perry, um, and there was some concern in the beginning about should he do interviews because he wasn't in a good place at the time, and is it the right thing to do to put him in a situation where it just might not be um, the cheeriest, the happiest, the boy, it's so great to get together with you. What I just didn't know because he really wasn't in a good place. And I remember that one day we were doing a spin interview here in Los Angeles down at the beach. And he was, he was okay. Um, but my whole point is what I realized, and this was still bearing in mind that I would never put him in a position where he would look bad, where that he could look bad. But I
Sure.
did realize that in sitting in on a couple of these interviews that he would do, we did a couple with Spin, he was on the cover twice with Spin, and we did a whole number of them. But one thing I realized is that um, he couldn't, that 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 even though he might not have been 100% strong and proactive and nothing's going to get to me, I got my armor on, he's a very vulnerable and very honest person. And I remember thinking about Michael Jackson at the time, who was, not getting a lot of good publicity, and it was really
Sure.
beginning to hurt him. And that's what really made me concerned about Perry and what was the right thing to do. But at some point, I realized, based on the way that the final features turned out, the way they ended up, that he looked great. He came across as great. Nobody was thinking to themselves, "Boy, this guy's really messed up." And I realized that he was at a point, kind of like Michael Jackson was, where he was being honest, and if as long as he's being honest and he was communicating, he could not be hurt. And during the period of time that I worked with him, he wasn't. He
Um,
got the press that we got, especially with all these cover stories that we did at this particular time a number of years ago. They were all
mhm.
phenomenal. And I think that people are always more attracted to something different, something unique, something that isn't just the norm. Um, and that right there that affinity, that interest can act as an insulator to the artist.
Hi, I'm Bell here with Slam with Jack Mangan and Dave Ellefson.
Everybody, David Olson here, and you should support Slam.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And of course, Perry and Jane's Addiction and Dave, they're all on the Mount Olympus in my view, and I think most of the metal and music world's view. I mean, these are they've done incredible things. But yeah, obviously, I mean, my heart goes out to him for what's happened recently in his life. I don't know. I mean, I'll ask candidly. I mean, how did that strike you? There was the recent, and if people are wondering what I mean by context, there was a recent internet story. It was a story about how he basically had a confrontation on stage. He had a bad moment on stage, and I mean, that must have been. I mean, it's heartbreaking for me as a fan, as just someone who tries to be a person with empathy. I mean, how did you feel kind of seeing that?
Well, very, very sad. Very sad.
Mhm.
I I think though, and I don't mean for this to sound cold, but I think that, and I'm also not trying to validate what happened with him.
Of course, of
Very
course.
sad. I mean, he's a very empathetic person. He really does care. And so I'm really sorry that all that happened. But I think that in some ways it helps solidify the relationship that fans have with him, that they care about him now in a whole different way than they maybe did before. They see he's human. And I think that does create an empathy and a bigger love for him.
Yeah, I sure hope so. And yeah, I mean, and for anyone who felt concerned about that, of course, it's the internet. And of course, there were crappy reactions to it. I mean, my advice, and of course, I'm not the interview subject here, but my advice is to just not, as with all the negativity that's in social media and that kind of thing, is just don't let that get. That's not the true story. That's not the true story at your heart, and at his heart. That's the true story is, yeah, that this is, he obviously has something that he needs to deal with in his life. But that's my feeling on it, is just move past the negativity. So I guess that's not a question, but I don't know if you feel the same or if you have a different perspective on that.
No, look at it's ideally, it would be great if he just wouldn't be taking the stage when he's in that place.
Mhm.
That would be ideal, I think. But I don't think that that's a possibility with Jane's Addiction. And again, I haven't worked with them in a long, long time, so I don't know their management. I don't know their tour manager. I don't know any of that. I guess my only point is that while it is so sad and you want, I would like to see nothing but happiness and health, mental health, physical health for Perry. But my point is that I don't think that situations like that end up hurting him with the fans.
Okay.
Which again is not, oh well then okay, then let's make sure that happens at every show. I don't mean that at all.
Of course.
You know.
Of course, right, right. No, I mean, I completely understand it. And actually, I'll take it back on the broader perspective. I think it's wonderful that you, as a PR person, but when you were working with him, that you had that in mind. I mean, across this industry now, I know a lot of PR people, and really, there's so many great people in this field. Like Amy Sherrill. I'm going to keep singing her praises because she's a great person. John Bambino is a great person. John Freeman. So many great people in your field. But you feel like that's a fair part of what you have to do, or is that just part of it? Some people have said it's almost like being a babysitter or momming the artist. Is that kind of a fair thing to say? Is that you end up doing that kind of thing and helping some artists through these difficult spots and protecting them during these difficult things?
I've never looked at it like that. I really haven't. I have a job to do. The most important thing is that the artist looks good. The artist comes across, with a really interesting story and was able to tell it, and that people think highly of the artist and love, love the stories that he, his background and what he talks about. Would I have always preferred that Perry, was in tip-top healthy shape? Absolutely.
Sure.
But that just really wasn't the cards that were dealt. And again, what I am not saying is, therefore, then it's really okay to have him go out and do interviews all the time. I'm not saying that at all, because there were many that he did not do. But one of the things that I just learned was, as long as it was manageable, it didn't seem to hurt him press-wise. It wasn't like people were writing stories about, how that, whatever was taking place at what they saw and what they heard and what they witnessed at the table in Venice for the interview. Nothing bad was ever written about from these interviews.
Yeah, and that's great. Yeah, I mean, again, what is still, the recent incident notwithstanding, still just a legendary career and a legendary, and also, I mean, think of the good he has done. Well, not just him by himself, Jane's Addiction, but and each of the individuals in Jane's Addiction, there's how much good they've brought to the world, and how many, like, they've probably literally saved lives. People who found meaning and hope in those songs and those music and connection through that music. I guess I'm sorry, Heidi, that's not really a question either, but
no, it's okay. I agree totally. From Nothing Shocking on, they were one of the single most creative, inventive artists that I've ever worked with. And Perry's so great because he always has a great idea. Every meeting, every conversation. I ran into him at a concert a while ago, and it just he's such an enjoyable person. It's like whatever's going on, Perry seems to really enjoy what he does. He loves what he does, and that's infectious.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Yeah, wonderful. And so, I mean, it's certainly an enigma for sure. Are there other people? I guess I'm putting you on the spot a little bit. I need to come up with someone off the top of your head. Are there other people who are kind of enigmatic and just powerhouses and just of emotion and creativity in the same way that, or a similar way to him? Nobody's exactly like him, but do you know what I mean? Can you think of other people who have just been amazing, in similar ways?
In similar ways, not that affected me. No. I don't think I mean, there was one artist that I worked with that did have a drug problem. But that guy got up on stage every night and he put on a hell of a show. And I'm not saying, well, so then therefore it's okay that he did drugs.
Sure.
But there was, he was, not emotional. Not everybody's emotional in the same way.
Yeah, no, I understand. No, I completely understand. Let me actually turn to actually someone who, as far as I know, and I've read his books, I don't think he has any history of anything this kind of darkness, but a class act. Sorry, I'm building the tension leading up to his name, but a guy's a total class act who actually I got to interview through working with Heidi, is Frank Bello of Anthrax, of course. Put out a very personal, deeply personal book where he did talk about some darkness that had happened in his life, but just someone who I think is just such energy, so widely loved in that whole world. That's just someone else I just want to sing his praises. He just was a font of positivity. And again, I've talked to a lot of rock stars in the world, and not, Frank Bello is a huge one in my world, but he did not talk to me like, oh, sure, I'll you can kiss my ring and I'll talk to you for a little while.
Oh, no.
He was so down to earth and personal and just so I mean, I'm saying this in a good way. This is a happy stereotype. He was such a New York Italian. He was like, hey, how you doing, man? What can I do for you? How can I help you? So it was really just really wonderfully down to earth, just a great guy. And just one more thing. This is Heidi's time to talk, but I will say I love talking to him about how the fact that When Spreading the Disease was kind of blowing up, and I was a crazy super fan for that tape. I never would have dreamed that I could have hopped on a train and gone into New York and bought a sandwich from him because he was still working at the deli. Like just,
That's great.
so yeah,
The thing about Frank Bello is that he's just Frank Bello. He's not this, snippy rock star. He's Frank Bello. He's the guy, like you say, he's for the Italian neighborhood in New York. I mean, he really is a regular guy. I always love having conversations with him on the phone. They last for hours, but um, he loves what he does, and he's just, it's not the whole thing about being impressed about, who he is or whatever. It's just not part of his makeup. He's just a regular guy.
yeah. And I will also comment on this. Now, of course, I wasn't around. I was a kid in the 80s. I was born in the 70s, so I was a kid in the 80s. So I didn't see that era of MTV and egos and that kind of thing. But I I sure, and yes, I have met rock stars who were kind of assholes, but in general, this community is really down to earth and cool and just nice. That's been my impression of so many, like the vast majority. Is that fair to say, or have things changed?
No, I think that that's a very fair thing to say.
Yeah.
There's always going to be people who get, really enamored by themselves, but that really doesn't have a whole heck of a lot to do with the entertainment business as it does with the individual.
That's probably fair, right? They would probably be that way if we were all on the staff at Home Depot together. They'd probably treat us all that way.
Yeah, we're all different. We're all different. Some of us are
Yeah.
different in a good way, and then there's others.
No, I love it. So actually, there's a question I asked of Amy Sharetto, and I asked this of when I had some managers on a Slam Summit not that long ago. So, because I find this fascinating. Maybe it's only me, but what are the differences? How do you differentiate for people listening? How can they understand the differences between PR, and artist management and agents? So like those three different roles. Like some people think it's all the same thing. So how would you kind of describe the difference between what you do and some of those other roles?
They're three completely different jobs, completely. Publicist, my job is to have my clients written about on television, in the newspaper, online. That's my job as a publicist. Management is the one that he's the ringleader of the entity. He is the go-to guy for every one of the band members when they need whatever they need, or if they have an idea. They're writing songs for the next album, and they want to run everything by management. Or if they no longer want to, they're doing much better than they've ever done before. Therefore, they don't want to tour in a van. They would like to have a bus, so they go to the manager. The manager is the one who manages the career. And the agent is the guy that gets the band, the artist, jobs, gets them booked on tours, gets them booked in clubs, headline venues, whatever. Those are the three distinctive jobs when it comes to working with an artist.
And see, that's a great answer. And you know what? For my frequent listeners, my return listeners, you're probably saying, "I wish you would stop asking that question." But I feel like every time I get a great and different and interesting answer, and I love the answer you just gave. I think that's fantastic.
I'm glad.
Michael Brandvold, actually, if he was saying, like, manager that's the role where guy will say, "Hey, my wife threw me out. I need you I need a couch to sleep on." Like, so that's more of a manager type of thing.
Exactly. It is exactly it. Yeah.
Well, yeah. So this is great. And again, I really appreciate all the time. We'll just one or two more, and then I'll let you get back to your day and everything. But I guess So if you don't mind, well, let's talk about a little bit more about your career. I know I kind of gushed quite a bit in the beginning, but talk to me about some of your highlights. I mean, I know there are a lot. So again, I guess I'm putting you on the spot, but some of the big highlights from your publicity career.
Well, I remember there was one thing that was kind of funny. which was first? I did a Sean Cassidy tour. No, that's not true. I did the publicity for the Sex Pistols when they first emerged.
Wow.
I was in Tulsa when they did their first date there, and I remember I remember walking into the club where they were playing, and I'd be honest, I'd never ever met anybody like those people, especially Sid. I just never had. I remember that when I first met them, I went on the bus just to say hello and introduce myself, and I was grabbed, just because I was a girl on the bus, and got off the bus quickly. But I remember their first show that I went to see, the very first show the second show, the first show they did, I think was in Atlanta, and they trashed that hotel, and then they came to Tulsa. I'm almost positive it was. And I remember walking into the venue and the show was already on. And the thing that was just struck me, because I'd never seen anything like it, there were all these kids, these fans, a number of them in wheelchairs. And they were tattooed and they were, had all the things, in their noses and in their ears. And I'd heard about it, but I'd never seen anything like it, ever, ever.
Wow, that's incredible.
Working with the Sex Pistols was definitely interesting. It was definitely interesting. It was a lot of fun. I mean, I look back on it fondly.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's good. Well, yeah, I mean, I guess it's hard to top that. No, that's a good one.
Well, yeah, and I went from that tour to a Rod Stewart tour. And I went from that tour to a Sean Cassidy tour. So I've worked with a whole plethora of different people.
Hi, everybody. This is Brian Plita, publisher of Coffin Comics, and I'm a lifelong metalhead. But I'm here to say, please support Slam, because everybody needs a hand up every once in a while, and this organization is the right one to do the job. Thank you.
Alice Cooper's one of my favorite performers ever. Really, a really nice guy, but gives everything when he's on stage. But I mean, I've been very, very, very fortunate with the artists that I've been able to work with.
Yeah, I mean, I've never met Alice Cooper, so I can't. But yeah, it's just, again, the reputation and the things he does. He's clearly a good human. And now, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you worked with Ghost and Tobias before anybody knew that Tobias was Ghost, right? Am I getting my timeline right with that?
That is true. That is true. And that's the only time I worked with them.
Yeah.
I don't work with them now.
No, right. Yeah. This is in the past. Yeah, that must have been interesting, kind of keeping a lid on that as they were blowing up, and he was trying to maintain the secret identity. I don't know if that was a challenge for you, or if that was more his problem and not yours as much. But that was interesting. Yeah, again, it's so now it does seem, and Rod Stewart and Sean Cassidy, but you've also, in general, had been drawn to the heavy stuff in your career. Was that your personal choice, or was that just kind of where life and fate led you?
I think that's just a combination of both.
Yeah.
The artist that I I went to Warner Brothers Records. When did 1971, I guess. And that's when I started to tour. I'd never been out on the road before. I mean, I'd never really done much publicity before either. But that is the job that got me started in this industry and going out on the road. And actually, before I went there, I was hired because the head of publicity at Warner Brothers Records had this idea of she had publicists in New York and publicists in Los Angeles. And the publicists in New York, whenever an artist would come to New York to play, then that publicist would, get all the New York press to cover the artist. Same thing with LA. And what Billie Wallington, the lady who was head of publicity at Warner Brothers at the time, what she wanted and what she hired me for was to take care of the rest of the country. And she wanted a tour publicist, somebody who would go on tour with the artists. And that's what I did for many years. I would go into a city early. I would go to the private airfield to wait for the artist to fly in. And I would have local television news crews at every single solitary stop. And the news crews would film the 4 or 5 black limousines that were pulling up to where the private plane had just landed and stopped, and the stairs came down, and the TV news crews also got the artist walking down the stairs, doing a couple of words with them when they got on the tarmac, and then the crews would come back to the show that night, and I'd hook them up with a board feed so that their sound was the greatest. I had them at the board feed for the first 3 numbers where they could shoot the first 3 numbers from a distance. And then I walked them all up to inside the barricade and they shot the next 3 numbers. And they were on the news, the stories that were done at the airport, they made the 5 o'clock news. And then the stories that were done at the shows, they were on the 10 o'clock news. And that's what I did for many, many years with a lot of different artists. And that was so much fun. And had never been done before. And of course, today it's everybody, it's just normal. But that was a lot of fun, from Jethro Tull, Alice Cooper, the Doobie Brothers, America, just a whole bunch of people.
You're killing me, Heidi, with this. My gosh, like all these like people that I've looked up to and listened to, and it's just incredible. What just an amazing career. But thank you for your role in it. Again, it should be lauded. The innovations you've made and just the great things you've done helping bring this to the world. There, see, I said no more compliments, but there's another one. Sorry.
You're very, very. All right, I'm going to flatten that for a minute.
Okay.
When I was out on the road with America, they were playing. It doesn't really matter where they were playing, but when I was out on the road with America, they were playing on the 4th of July, and I wanted to do something special for the show because it was the 4th of July. So I talked Billie Wallington, my boss, the head of publicity. I came to her with the idea of having made a gigantic bell, a huge bell, that we would fill with confetti, and at the end of the show, and we would launch the bell, and it was probably like about 10 feet tall. It's a huge thing.
Wow.
And we would have it hanging from the ceiling, and at the end of the show, it was fit with a door so that somebody could pull a very, very long rope and open the door, and the confetti would just lazily make its way down to the floor and cover the people, and it would be really sweet. And she let me do it, and it was such a disaster. It was such a disaster. At the end of the show, I don't remember who did it, but somebody went over to the to where the rope was hanging and pulled the door. Instead of there being paper confetti, there was metallic confetti. And it just came down on the person sitting next to the chair, and just was just awful. I mean, it must have hurt.
Oh my God. See, and people think Spinal Tap is a comedy. They don't know that it is a real documentary.
Yes,
That's such a Spinal Tap moment. Oh my God, that is hilarious.
It definitely was a Spinal Tap moment. Yeah, absolutely was.
No, that's fantastic. Well, I'm going to say, yeah, again, wonderful stories. You're welcome back really anytime, Heidi. Really, thank you so much for taking the time. What can you take us out by telling us promote some more awesome things that you have going on now in 2025, and any artists, anything about yourself, your business, and your artists that you want to promote for right now.
Nah. Definitely check out Carla Harvey's upcoming record. She, of course, was Butcher Babies. She was
Right.
with Butcher Babies. She's really fabulous, really smart. What a smart lady she is. And she and Anthrax's Charlie Benante are getting married. And she wrote all of the lyrics for this album, and Charlie wrote all the music and played all the music on the album. It's really, really great. And she's just got the greatest backstory. I love her backstory. The funeral stuff is just, I was going to say just to die for, but I don't think I'll say that.
Sure.
Also, Dirty Honey, they're going to be making a new album this year, probably be out either late this year or next year. They are going on tour this fall. They are a fabulous live band. And their, Mark, their lead singer, is just a stone star, absolute star. Great singer, great frontman, and really, really great guys. Carrie King with Slayer. Slayer, of course, is doing a couple of shows, a couple of festival shows this summer. And they're also playing a headline show in Hershey, Pennsylvania, for any of your listeners who are in Hershey. This is not, like so many press people have said, they're back together now. Slayer's back. Slayer really did do their final world tour back in November of 2019. That was their final world tour, and they will not tour again, period. But they do enjoy, they enjoy performing, but they're not going to tour again. But they are going to be they're going to continue to do these one-offs. Some of these big festivals, or like the show in Hershey. So that's really exciting, but there's not going to be another Slayer record. Carrie King is, put out his first record, did really, really well. He is continuing to do a lot of headline shows. He's doing a lot of South American dates, and he will have a new record out next year, and will be touring again. Carrie's one of the neatest people on the planet. I love Carrie King. He's just, there's not a bad word I could say about him. He's just really awesome. And Anthrax will have a new record coming out next year, early next year, I hope. When am I saying? No, I think it might be like the second or third quarter.
Okay.
And those are Carla Harvey. Yeah, check out Carla Harvey. She's awesome.
All right. Yeah, it's all exciting stuff. If you have like 5 more minutes after I hit record, we can kind of just take a breather and talk about it for a minute. If you got, again, I don't want to keep you from the rest of your day. If you got a couple more minutes, we can chat. We're done. But
it's okay.
Yeah. So Heidi Robinson-Fitzgerald, again, legendary career, still going really, really strong, as you just heard. So yeah, thank you so much, Heidi. It's been really a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I've really enjoyed it, and you're a real sweetheart, and I'm very flattered that you asked.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone.
Have a great rest of your day.